Want some candy?
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
I hear you looking for candy, man, bitch.
Give me some sugar, baby. Like scary movies.
Uh-huh. Want some candy?
Right.
It was.
Okay. I'll take it. Yeah. All right, let's get into it.
All right. What up, candy killers? Welcome back to another episode of Monster Candy Podcast. And we hope you had a good October. We're back. But Oobliette has come down with a sickness. She got down with the sickness. So tonight, myself, Screamin E from the Memphis Murder Men, and Gucci T Mike Terry is back from the Jukebox Romantics. And we're going to talk about, what is it? Coralie Fargeat? Fargeat?
I think it's Fargeat.
Fargeat?
You know, I dated a girl from France for years, and literally right before we started Zooming,
I
was like, should I hit her up about this? And I was like, you know what? Nah, it's fine. It's French, so I'm sure it's pronounced something like Fargeat or Fargeat. But nobody I've seen who's done an interview or talked about this movie has pronounced her name the same way. So
right,
sure. And I love how no one's figured it out. So we'll join
it's
that.
Whatever we want. Anyway, her new body horror flick, The Substance. Terry's been on us for the last month, and I was like, you guys got to see this. You got to do it. You got to do it. I think that's why Oobliette came down with the sickness. I was like, oh, I can't do it.
Did she see this movie?
I mean, we'll never know.
I don't know if she did. We'll have to talk to her off air. Yeah. Let's jump into news first.
It's time to talk about some horror news brought to you by Time Bomb Toys, located at 300 Camp Horn Road in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Go check them out in person or online at timebombtoys.com for all your horror needs.
Dude, I was on Time Bomb Toys the other day. I literally just checked it. I was taking a shit like 3 days ago, and I was like, let me go check out Time Bomb Toys, because I was like, I saw like the logo somewhere. And I was just like, oh man, they got some good shit on here. And I was like looking, I was like, all right, I need to stop looking at this shit before I buy something awesome that I definitely need and don't need. But they got some really cool stuff.
They do got some great stuff. Bob's a great guy. They got some cool, if you're into the
they got lots of
paraphernalia and the fun toys and whatnot. He's got it all.
I gotta get down there my next trip to the Berg to check it out in person.
Do it. They got a nice little t-shirt area.
What street is it on in Pittsburgh?
Camp Horn Road. It's okay. It's like off in the cut because it's not in like Pittsburgh proper.
Right. I know how. Yeah, I know how the city kind of works.
Yeah, it's outside a little bit, so it's like down like this long ass windy road. Trees. Cool. Everywhere. Yeah, but
dude, it's such a cool looking city. If anybody's listening has never been to Pittsburgh, very cool looking city and very cool place to travel. Lots of restaurants and things to do.
Dude, if you want to eat, go. I mean, that's just East Coast. Period. It's
sure.
Like you want to eat everywhere. There's food everywhere. We'll get something good.
Dude, I know. That's why I'm so fucking fat. This October, I went to town, dude. So much candy. What a great October it was. I don't know how your October was, but I thought it was a really solid, like Halloween vibe. It felt like, I mean, you know us, we're horror people. We ride the Halloween vibe year long. But I felt like this October, it was just riding strong. So much was coming out, and there was always something new to watch, like every day, if you wanted to.
There was definitely a lot to see and check out if you so choose. That is cool. That's a fact. Yeah. So
you got any news? What you got?
I got a few things. So Spookies 2. If you've never seen Spookies 1, the 80s amazing film. I never saw it until it was on the last drive-in, and it's a bad movie, but it's a charming movie. I'm for Spookies. I'm here for it. So they're finally
like I had to see it on the drive-in, but I don't remember this movie at all.
Yeah, it's bad, but
is it old? It's an old movie.
Yeah, it's from the 80s. So they're finally going to do a sequel to it, so that's fun. There's also Outbreak, a new zombie flick coming out, which
Nice.
I mean, I don't know, but they're like, it's an outbreak.
Yeah. It's
Like,
I feel like we got beat over the head with zombies for so many years, especially because The Walking Dead.
right,
And then we have a pandemic happen. So it's like it's
right.
hard to do, like it's easy to and hard to do a zombie thing again. It's a kind of like low-hanging fruit.
Right.
And now I feel like we're like, we've been in the vampire world a little bit and we're about to turn into the werewolf world again.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if the world needs any more zombie movies.
You know,
I know Romero's got something cooking up too. I thought I
if
heard a couple weeks back.
if they're gonna do something, and to me, I'm like a traditionalist. I'm like, make it some weird farmhouse you're in the country, like something minimalist, and
Yeah.
not make. I mean, you can make it. Granted, the original one, there's a fucking satellite from space and fell, and that's what kind of made everyone turn into a zombie. But like, I was never a big 28 Days Later fan. So like the virus thing,
Sure.
I'm like,
Yeah, infected. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'm like, I mean, that's
It's not so
cool.
much the dead rising. It's still different.
Right, right. So this one, the premise is a state park ranger, Billy Burke, goes in search of his missing teenage son and is confronted with zombie-like people carrying an infectious disease following a virus outbreak. So that just makes me feel like it's going to be like a
Same
28
old,
days
same
later
old.
thing, which I mean, whatever, as long as it's
You
entertaining.
bring up a good point. We've gotten a lot of the 28 Days Later, like wide scope zombie movies. And I
Right,
think the last one to really do it well was probably Train to Busan.
right.
And even that was like it was wide scope but still focused.
Hmm.
I feel like it might be time to go back to the farm and just do it like in a
Yeah,
one location,
right.
like and really just character driven, like and maybe we got that for a long time with The Walking Dead, but even that kind of expanded. So I don't know, like I don't know, I'll mention it a little bit more in horror news later when I drop some more horror news. But I am we can talk about like Night of the Living Dead and how like it's very special because of the setting of
For
what
sure.
it is.
Yeah, and
But
they're dead. That's,
yeah, I
you
feel like
know,
we haven't got dead things in a while. It's been infected things,
yeah,
which
it's
probably is more realistic in the sense of like if there was going to be a zombie outbreak, it probably wouldn't be the dead rising. It would be an infection.
right.
But I'm down for I would love another let's they're crawling out of the ground zombies movies. It's been a
Exactly.
while.
Even, you can add the science fiction element to it. Like there was something that happened that caused the dead to rise. Like that's what I want. I don't want, these people get sick and then they make other people sick. I'm like, yeah,
Right. And then
well,
they become like fucking speed demon zombies. Not that I have
yeah,
anything against fast zombies, but there's only a couple movies that have done it well. And so
right, right.
yeah.
So the only other thing which I thought was interesting. So Ty West, our buddy Ty West, is doing
Ooh.
like a faux documentary loosely based on like the Jonestown incident, and it's called The Sacrament. So basically, a few people get together and then they go explore some shit.
Wait. There is a movie called The Sacrament.
Is
And,
there?
yeah, and I think it's Ty West.
Oh,
It's an old movie.
is it?
Yeah. You never see The Sacrament?
Oh yeah, it's 2013. I did not. I did
Oh,
not.
wow. Dude, okay. You need to see this movie.
Oh,
It's
okay.
so good. It's so good. Dude,
Yeah,
so
I just saw it pop up on my thing. I'm like, oh shit. Oh, I see. They were talking about it on a podcast. Yeah, I've never seen The
oh,
Sacrament. I've never
dude.
even heard about this.
Dude, I love this news for you. This is news for you though.
This is
And
breaking
maybe
news for me.
and maybe news for the listeners. Like, okay, so I learned about Ty West, I think from the VHS movies, right?
Right,
I
right,
think he
right.
did a VHS movie in like the first or second VHS movie. And then his movie after that, I think his first movie, full-length movie was The Sacrament. And it is so good. It's filmed like a Vice documentary, but
Right. Well,
very,
that's what
very,
it's what it's based off of now that I'm
yeah.
reading down further.
It's
Yeah.
it's Jonestown. It's not its own story. It
Right.
tries to play off that it's its own
Yeah, right,
story.
right.
It's dude. When we're done, it's early where you are. Earlier, you're watching this movie
Early-ish, yeah.
tonight. It's
All
good.
right.
I love this movie. This is the reason why I was so excited to see X before X came out
Yeah,
because they
I've
were like, it's
never
from the
even
guy
heard
who
of
brought
this.
you The Sacrament. I was like, oh, I'm down.
Yep. Well, that's something new. Look at that. We're learning.
way
Real-time learning.
way different vibes than the X trilogies, though. Way different.
Right. I'd assume. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll check
entirely
that
less
out.
sex and fun.
Right. Yeah. But no Mia Goth, so I don't know how
No
much
Mia
I'm gonna
Goth.
like it.
Ah,
Yeah.
sweet,
Anyway,
sweet,
that's all.
sweet
That's
Mia.
all the horror news I got.
All right, let's see what I got. All right, so right off the bat, let me get the bad news out of the way. Tony Todd passed away.
Oh, R.I.P.
The Candyman himself, Tony Todd, known to break out on the scene with Platoon, and then he was in the 1990, to bring it back to what we were just talking about, the 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead,
Yep.
which is where I first remember seeing him. And I saw the 1990 Night of the Living Dead before I saw the original one. And I saw the original one for the first time in Sleepy Hollow, or the town next to Sleepy Hollow, at the Tarrytown Music Hall. They played it on an actual big screen there when I was like a kid. But I remember this movie. I remember this is the first time I saw Night of the Living Dead in general, and it's pretty much like the same movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, it was so good, and what a fucked up ending. And then he's in the Final Destinations he was a big part of. And then more recently, the Hatchet movies, which at the time the Hatchet movies were coming out, I was really excited for them. Those were like movies I always looked forward to just because they're silly.
Right.
I don't know how he passed away. He was 69. But man, what a presence on screen. What a great voice.
Oh, yeah.
And the Candyman is such a unique character that I feel like doesn't get enough love next to, it's like, you got your Freddy, you got your Jason, you got your Michael Myers, and then I feel like right under them is like, Pinhead and Candyman, like live in the same level of importance to them.
I feel like part of that is because the sequels were just not great.
No, yeah.
Like those other franchises, I mean, not a lot of those sequels aren't great either, but
they were given more of a public lens, like a bigger budget lens and all that.
Yeah, and there's some like real bangers in it that you're like, okay, that one's cool, but like Candyman,
dude, I
love
just
the
remember
first
Candyman
one
being at my local video stores. Like that poster was everywhere.
Yep, I thought the first one was fucking great. Virginia Madsen in it and everything.
It's just different, way different vibe.
And then the second one, I was like, all right, sequels aren't always the best, but okay. And then the third one, I was just like, oh, I can't anymore. So
I think Candyman 3, I stopped watching it when I started watching it. Like it was not like,
but
rough. The remake was pretty good. And it was, I think we might've done it on the show, or maybe it was like, but it was pretty good. From what I remember, but I don't think Tony Todd was in it at all, or maybe he made a cameo, but it's funny, when I was looking at his movies before, I forgot that he's in The Crow for like a hot second.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Like a super hot second, probably because they couldn't afford him.
Right.
But like, I feel like for a lot of people who maybe have not seen his movies or not seen Candyman, like, and you're into horror, you've definitely seen Tony Todd like in every documentary about horror movies.
Oh yeah.
He's a great interview, and he's a great talker, and he's just got like a great voice, and a very smart guy. And so
he's super nice dude too.
Yeah, I think there's also, did you ever hear the story about Tony Todd and the bees? And when they did like either the first movie, or the second movie, no, it's the first movie where he opens his mouth and all the bees fly out of his mouth. You know that scene?
Yeah.
So he says in an interview that he didn't want to do it. And obviously CGI was like a new thing. And they were like, we can't CGI it. Like, it won't look good. You need to do it with like real bees. And they had like a bee guy on set and all this stuff. And basically the director, like, to convince him to do it, they made a deal. He's like, for every bee that I get stung by, I want an extra $1,000, like, for the day.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah. And he agreed to it. And I'm 90% it's the first movie. But just a crazy story. So rest in peace, Tony Todd. A little bit of sad news there. So
a little bit.
But moving on to happier news, or other news, Cineverse, the people who brought us Terrifier, the Terrifier franchise, or the new recent ones, they have.
Have you seen the third one yet?
Twice in theater.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Oobliette hasn't yet. We have to.
It's on the list. Yeah. I feel like just like the X trilogy, I feel like Terrifier, maybe we should just do like a whole episode about Terrifier in general, and maybe not just the single movie.
Right.
I feel like it's important to the Terrifier thing. But Yeah, so they got the rights to Silent Night, Deadly Night, and they're releasing a new
Dude,
one in late 2025.
I
And
saw that.
I I personally am not a huge Silent Night, Deadly Night fan. It's a great movie, and I watch it every Christmas time with
I
my
mean,
other
it's
Christmas horror. It's a classic for me, but it doesn't really like chap my ass if they make a remake of it, especially because these guys are doing it. I think it'll be done well enough that like it won't bother anybody. Maybe
right. I mean,
it's not
it,
good to begin with, so it's
yeah,
like
it is what it is. Like, which is fine.
it is funny that those guys are the guys that are doing it because it totally makes sense. Like if anybody else
Right.
grabbed it, you'd be like, all right, like they're going to turn it into something completely different. But with these guys grabbing it, it's like they might just make the same exact movie.
See, I mean, that's why that's what should be being done with
Is
movies. Like
what?
you take a movie that's not great
Make it a little bit better.
and make it a little bit better. Like even if you
Yeah.
still keep it like kind of stupid and silly or like whatever,
I mean,
like
look at the
that's fine.
Terrifier movies. Like they have levels of like campiness to them or like over the top gore. Like you could take Silent Night, Deadly Night and just put that filter on it and just make it a little bit more gory and it's still a good time.
Right. You could totally make it.
That's probably what's missing from those movies.
Yeah. I mean, you can absolutely make it a little more serious and not as campy and make a good movie. It won't be the same. And, you know, it's like a cult classic because it is just total camp and everything. But there's a good movie there. You could actually make like a legitimately solid movie.
Oh, the
So,
bones of that movie are there.
right.
There's a reason why it's a classic. It's just like, it could be done better. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. No. So
Yeah.
that's like, I love when they do that with
Right.
remakes.
And late 2025 says Christmas to me. So I guess that's when it's coming out. So
Perfect.
I'm sure it'll be on whatever streaming service. And maybe, and you know what? If they're getting the Mickey Mouse movie that they're doing, Mouse Trap or whatever it is,
Yeah.
out in the theater for a day, off the success of Terrifier 2 and 3, then I don't have it any doubt that Silent Night, Deadly Night will probably get a theatrical release because it'll be in December. Like nothing's coming out. So it's like,
Oh, I mean, I would hope so.
especially now, every horror movie, like, horror movies are like ruling the theater and that and like, Oscar bait. So like it's gonna get in there in the theater. So
Yeah.
look
I
forward to that.
I hope so. So
My last bit of news, which I'm super, super excited for, and I kind of feel like we knew it was coming. On the 70th anniversary of Godzilla, a special announcement was made as if it was like a, emergency broadcast that Toho has greenlit another Godzilla film with writer and director and visual effects supervisor Takashi Yamazaki, who did Godzilla -1.
we love this.
This is big news because it was my favorite movie of last year, 2023, and it's a lot of people's favorite movie of the year. It won an Oscar, so the fact that it was the first Godzilla film to win or be recognized for an Oscar, not that we in the
Right.
horror community really appreciate the Oscars since they just snub the Oscars all the time. I mean, snub horror movies all the time. It's nice to be appreciated after 70 years.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
at the end of Godzilla -1, there's a lot of, foreshadowing to a sequel. Now, this announcement that they made on November 3rd, Godzilla Day, it didn't say whether it was a sequel. It just said the same director is coming back. So I
Right.
would hope it's a sequel. I would think it's a sequel. Whether it's a direct sequel or like a futuristic thing, I don't know, but I'm down. And I hope the
Whatever.
Godzilla design stays the same. So,
Right. Give me more monsters.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
anything
100%.
that's more, yeah. So I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. I have one more piece of horror news that I
Oh,
forgot
sweet,
about.
sweet, sweet, sweet.
It's the fucking
You got to make up for the Sacrament one.
yeah, the decade of the
A decade later.
yeah. A decade later, I'm like, oh,
Well, I can't wait
that's
for
a
you to watch
movie?
that movie now, though. It's such a good movie.
The decade of remakes. So Mole People. We mentioned this a long time ago. So it looks like they're getting to it, and the host filmmaker Rob Savage is going to be directing it. The Mole People again, not. I mean, it's cool, not the best. You won, not the not the best Universal one, but we'll see.
It could be good.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
always down for more creature monsters.
that too, and especially because it's like it's not a super deep cut, but it's more obscure than most people that are into
Dude, I haven't seen the Mole
those
People
movies.
in a long time, since I was a kid, probably. So it's like,
Right. So it's being pitched as one man's nightmarish descent into the abandoned tunnels beneath the streets of New York City, where a
this is a
twisted
great
society
idea.
lurks.
This is a great idea. There's the Mole People lore of New York City and Vegas and
Right.
other cities across the world. There's books about it. There's been tons of documentaries, and now with YouTube and all these YouTube documentarians, there's a ton of Mole People things.
Yep.
I remember the Search for Mole People book in the movie when I was, years back. Like that was like a big thing. Uh, Humanoids of the Deep, Chud. I'm
Chud.
down with.
Yeah.
I'm done. I love anything like that. So if we can make a Chud, I'm fine with it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even care if it's very similar. That's the thing. Like, I don't give a shit if stuff is super similar to something else, even if
nah,
it's a
give me some
remake of an
creatures.
already movie. As long as it's done well and good,
Yeah.
I'm like, please
The
give
Mole
it to me.
People could be really great in
It could be.
multiple different ways. You can make it campy. You can make it very serious.
Yep.
You can make it a political commentary about how we treat, like, unhomed people
Oh yeah.
or like homeless people. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot to there. There's a lot there. I think all those movies did that too, like Chud and Humanoids of the Deep, and
Totally.
they all were making social commentary about homelessness and how we treat homeless
Right.
people.
The less
Just,
fortunate were like, nah, get
yeah.
out of here.
What do you think of this? To piggyback on some of this news, next week, so we're recording this like sometime in early November. Next week, they're releasing Street Trash, a new Street Trash.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that one, though. The original Street Trash is so, whatever.
Like the same thing with Silent Night, Deadly Night. And
It's
it's
you're
like
right.
you can either make it better or you're gonna try and make it. Here's the thing: you can't try and make these movies too good, like too good
Right.
of a story, or else it loses its it's already an established
So wait,
classic.
so I haven't heard anything about the Street Trash thing until recently, and so which is weird because it was like kind of like a cult classic, and it's not like Silent Night, Deadly Night, where there definitely has a bigger fan base for that movie. It definitely has been more accessible over the years.
Right.
But what I don't know. Street Trash is one that it seems weird that one's getting released, but we're never going to see the remake of Toxic Avenger. Like, where is that movie?
Dinklage pulled all the strings. It was like, never show this.
But it's like and it kind of plays into some of tonight's episode of The Substance, where like there's this traumaness to things that's like okay, and like it's okay to be ridiculous, and I feel like Toxic Avenger is the ultimate trauma film for me.
Right.
Like what was so bad that this movie couldn't come out?
Dude, like I don't know. I think they really tried to make it a good movie with like a lot of social commentary and like really getting to the fucking nuts and bolts of the message, and it just turned into a giant pile of shit and everyone is embarrassed. But dude, if they could put out the fucking Joker too, and everyone's like, that's the worst movie in the fucking universe.
I saw the Joker too.
Oh, did you?
I saw it with like two of my movie buddies. We went to the Alamo and saw it, and we were like, "Well, we'll go to the Alamo. Well, at least we'll get dinner. If it sucks, we've had dinner." And dude, it started off. I was like, "This isn't that bad. What's everybody talking about? Like, this is actually fine." I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember. I really liked the Joker movie. That was a great movie." And then like it started off with this little cartoon. I was like, "This is fucked up. This is cool." It reminded me of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like how the beginning of that movie starts with like the cartoon and then it cuts to like real life.
Right.
Very similar. And then it's 2 hours of just terrible, just not good and boring and slow.
Yeah.
The musical parts are whatever. They just slow things down. They're not even that bad. It's just repetitive. Oh, let's not talk about the Joker too. An actual bad movie. And it was funny when it was over. We're like, that was pretty bad, but not as bad as everybody says. And then as the days went on, it was like, this movie was bad. And then the next movie we saw after that 2 days later was Terrifier. So it was just like, oh, what a nice palate cleanser.
Yeah. Yeah, that sucks. Yeah,
that's my horror news, dude.
It's got to come out at some point.
I know. Where is this
got
movie?
to.
Someone's gonna have to buy it.
Yeah, that's probably what's gonna happen. Because right now they're just like, we're just writing this off to get some money because we lost so much out of this fucking thing.
They'll have to sell it to someone. Why wouldn't you put it on a streaming service? Like, it just seems like a no-brainer.
Like I said, I don't know.
I wonder if there's a Lloyd Kaufman like clause in there somewhere about something being like,
right.
You never know. There could be like actual a law thing. Well, I can't think of the word right now, but like maybe like like some sort of like lawsuit or something against it. You never know. That shit might just not be out there.
Yeah, could be. Or like I said, I think a lot of the people, like the bigger names involved with it, are like, this is so bad. And
No, if cats can come out and Joker too. I mean, we never got that Batgirl movie,
right?
So,
Maybe the Dink has more pull in Hollywood than we think, and he's just like, nope, I will not be seen in this piece of garbage.
maybe it was offensive or something, like too offensive to something. I don't know.
I mean, but
he's got to have a book, right? Does he have a book? Does he have a book coming out? Maybe it'll be in his book one day.
Maybe
somebody's got to ask him in an interview. Maybe we can get him on the show.
We should. Hey, Dink.
I'm gonna. You know what? If I do anything else in my life, it's gonna be reaching out to his people and trying to get him just to ask one question, like, "Yo, what's your favorite punk bands?"
Right.
And second, now that we've warmed you up a little bit,
yeah,
what happened to the Toxic Avenger movie?
I don't know. But now maybe it's all marketing and they're building.
No way.
Anticipation.
No way.
So people are like, I need to see it now.
Marketing for a very small crowd of people. Even though the teaser trailer was everywhere.
But dude.
And just as quickly as it everywhere, it has gone silent.
I mean, I wasn't really interested in seeing it at all. I mean, I would have seen it so we could do it. But now I'm like, oh, I think I need to see this because it's so bad. So let's cross our fingers.
I got everything crossed for this movie.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's been all right. Time to cross our streams with Coralie Fargeat's The Substance. As mentioned before, Terry was on this. He was like, you guys have to fucking see this. You have to. I put it off.
I might have been the first person in America who saw a trailer for this movie. I've been waiting for this movie for way too long. From before it even had a trailer. I remember when Coralie Fargeat put out Revenge, her first film, and that movie was fucking great. I saw it in an Alamo in like a 10-seat theater. It was great.
Okay.
And so when I saw the announcement for this movie on some horror movie website, they said it had the synopsis, which you're going to get into, and it said the only person signed on at the time was fucking Ray Liotta,
right?
Who soon passed, but there was no info about the movie. And then the first trailer dropped, and I still had no idea what this fucking movie was about. But that trailer, I was just like, fucking sign me up. And the hype was so high. I am shocked that it actually met, because rarely, especially these days, does that ever happen with movies. I'm looking at you, long legs. So let's get into it.
All right. All right. So the synopsis is: a fading celebrity takes a black market drug, a cell replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, a better version of herself. Now, that is where I have the biggest issue with this movie. We'll get into that. We'll talk about.
I knew this was going to be your issue. I knew this was going to be your issue.
This was it. But we'll
continue. When you get there, you let me know, and I will explain it away. And I also agree with you, though.
Right.
So I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say.
Fucked me up for the entire movie. But dislikes aside, the things that were good, the acting was great. I thought everyone did great in their roles, especially Dennis Quaid.
Dude.
Like
Dennis Quaid, his character, obviously named Harvey after Harvey Weinstein,
right,
is perfect. He plays this. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, I hope you saw the movie. But he plays this slimy TV exec, and he is disgusting. And with not just being disgusting, he might be the grossest part of this movie, which is a very body horror.
It is
body horror to the max. This movie, it is what Cronenberg's kids wish they could do. Like this movie was gross, and it's the sound design of this movie and the visuals is definitely an attack. Like, I don't know if you saw this in the movies, but if you saw it in the theater, the sound in this movie, especially the scene where Dennis Quaid is eating fucking impossible.
Dude, that alone, it is definitely the grossest part for me in the movie for many reasons.
A lot of people don't like when people eat. Sure.
That's super gross. But dude, I hate seafood, period.
Okay.
So he's eating
Wow.
shrimp, which is like sea roaches. They're just sea bugs too.
Sure.
So he's just eating it. It's like, I'm just like, oh, first of
The
all,
noise you just made is the noise.
right.
It's
I'm like eating the shrimp alone, not necessarily just eating the shrimp. Like that's gross because I don't like seafood, like I said, but the close up of it
yeah.
makes it worse. I'm like, ugh, which is what
You
they
know
were
what's
going
funny
for.
too? It's so gross. I have a buddy who's like really into ASMR shit, which is just another topic for another day. And so, and he was just like, this movie
Skeet, motherfucker.
this movie is an ASMR movie. And I was like, you are 100% correct. I don't
Right.
think there's another movie that I've seen that was this audio inducing of like, wow.
Boners. Yeah.
Especially that scene. And remember what I said when I first saw this movie was this is the horniest, grossest movie
Yeah.
I've seen in a long time.
Well, everything with him, like even smoking the cigarettes,
Oh,
like everything. The lighting of the cigarettes, the sound you hear the cigarette make when it burns down, like everything was.
it's funny because I rewatched this the last couple days, like over the last 2 days. I watched it in a couple parts, and I remember him being gross and annoying, but the shit he says, everything he says is fucking wrong and
Right.
gross, and he's just
Right.
disgusting.
He plays the
when
perfect
he's like,
slime
even when
ball.
he's just like, oh, yeah, that like I don't even know if Ray Liotta could have done it as well. If just Dennis Quaid nailed it. And
Yeah,
so
Ray Liotta is always gonna be that fucking Guido when he tries to play like a
in my
scumbag.
mind, that's who he's
Right. That's yeah.
yeah.
In every single movie
He's
I've ever seen him
Goodfellas.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it would definitely have given it a different vibe. I mean, it's not good that Ray Liotta passed away or anything, but
No,
just
I feel bad that this could have been his last movie,
right.
um, but
But yeah,
yeah. So Dennis Quaid knocks his dude.
out of the park.
Everybody knocks it out of this park in the
It's
park.
good.
Everybody it focuses on, which is
Right.
basically just the three of them: Dennis Quaid, Demi Moore, and Margaret Qualley. Which I'm a huge Margaret Qualley fan. Because she's in The Leftovers, which is like one of my
Mhm.
favorite shows of all time, and a very polarizing show that not a lot. It has its fan base, but I've never really seen her in anything else. Really,
Right.
people will be like, "Oh, she was like in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for like a hot minute, and like this and that." But this is like her actual
Right.
breakout movie role.
I couldn't
you know?
remember where I remember seeing her at,
But barely.
right.
Um,
Right.
um,
Dude,
and
I mean, the effects were great. Good effects.
the effects were amazing. They
Um,
were like for what it was, because we go from like severe effects to like crazy trauma like style effects,
Right,
like
right.
Guar,
Right.
and it's done
Very
on
basket case at the end.
and very yes, and on purpose. And
Of course.
I'm all for it. Like I'm all for
Right.
it. And what almost made me upset, but also appreciate it more is because Coralie, the director and writer, wanted to make a movie about the struggles for women and like the internal like how people look at women's bodies, how they're objectified, how women look at their own bodies and create these own monsters inside them. It's very much like, at times it's very much from the male gaze, which is why I said it's like a horny ass movie.
Right.
But it's funny because I read an interview with her where she was like, I wanted to make a movie about women's bodies, but the only way I can really do it was to do it from like this perspective of somebody in TV or movies. And then use the movie star trope of like, oh, an aging movie star
Right.
is the best way to make this movie about women's bodies because no one's bodies are more on display than a movie star. And it's kind of insane that when you think about it, if you know anything about Demi Moore, like this role was almost seemed like it was written for her because of what she went through in Hollywood growing
Yeah.
up.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
kind of crazy because it's not like this was written and then Demi Moore is just the perfect choice for it. So
Right. She did a great job. The camera work I thought was good. All the angles, I mean, very Kubrick.
yeah,
The Shining.
the white rooms, the long hallways,
Right.
the
Well, I
blood,
mean,
everything.
Everything, even down to the bathrooms, the bathroom at the end when Quiley, is that how you pronounce her name?
Margaret Qualley.
Quiley, yeah.
Yeah.
Where she starts falling apart. She goes into
Yeah.
it's red and white and it's very
Yeah.
that's the Shining.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that was cool. And then obviously just so much tits and ass in it. Like
So
Who
much.
doesn't love that? Who doesn't love it?
You know,
Even when it's gross and melting.
as
Fucking put it in
a
there.
man watching horror movies, it's always just like, oh, like especially old ones. It's like, all right, there's no boobs, it gets a minus point.
Right.
And not to sound like a sexist man here, because like I love all the messages in this movie. Like it's very important. This movie is really important, and I feel like, I really wish Oobliette had seen this movie and was doing
Right.
this with us right now, because it's very much a female focused thing, and I think this movie serves many masters of like you can enjoy bodies and enjoy it for, just looking, but also like when you're watching this movie, Demi Moore, when she's like the old casted out,
Right.
she is so hot still. Like, like she's not like when they're like you're 50 and you're over the hill, like she was still good looking on that show. Like you
Well,
get
yeah.
it.
I
It's like,
mean, yeah. Oh, okay. I thought you meant when she was like the old hag. I'm
no,
like, oh, are we
no,
opening up a new
no,
fetish for Terry right
no,
here, old
no,
ladies?
that was
Okay.
that was terrifying.
Right.
But like
That
the
was the Six Flags guy at the end.
oh totally.
Yeah.
No, not the end. Like, oh, when she gets,
What
yes,
her?
when her oldest form,
Yeah.
or her
Yeah.
most messed up form. But like Jesus, like
Yeah. I mean, she's
she looked great in it. And then I went to find out that because Coralie was so wanted to make sure everybody was like comfortable on set,
Mhm.
like with their bodies. Like, so Demi Moore, it's just Demi Moore's body. But Margaret Qualley didn't like felt, she was like, if we're gonna do this, like, she's like, my bust size isn't as big as somebody who would think it's like the perfect, better version of Demi Moore. Like, so to make her more comfortable, like she's wearing prosthetics. She's wearing prosthetic breasts the whole movie. So anytime she's naked,
Interesting.
it's not her boobs.
Huh.
And I knew that going into the second time watching it. So I was like looking for
Where's
like
the
trying to see
seam
it.
at? Yeah.
And I was just like, you can't see it, but I was just
Yeah.
like, this was
Yeah.
really well done. And just like, it makes sense. Like it was on purposely shot to look perfect, like skin glistening, not a wrinkle on anything. Like all these extreme close-ups of like asses and hips and
Mhm.
things like that. That whole pump it up scene where like the chicken bone goes right to her thighs.
Right. Right.
That saying, like, and
Right.
she pulls it out of her stomach. Like,
Yeah.
these are like brilliant things. The movie is brilliant. I like 95% of the movie, and the 5% I don't like, I can totally forgive. But like, wow, what a movie. And I love that now that it's being, and the reason why I think we're doing it now is because it's finally being like released at home for streaming, so more people can see it. Because and I see now people posting online like, "Oh my God, the substance! This is fucking crazy!" Like normal people who probably
Right.
wouldn't
Right.
see it, especially because it's Demi Moore.
Right.
But like, it's her best movie probably in a long time.
Definitely
Probably
in a
her
long
most
time.
well acted movie. And like, yeah, this movie hit for me for a lot of things. The things that it didn't hit on, like, when you want to get there, you let me know. But what did you like about, like, what did you love about this movie? Because I feel like there's a lot that you probably liked about this movie.
Not a lot, actually.
No,
No. Your 95% is like I'm like 5% enjoyed this movie.
why?
Because
I mean, this is
of
good. This is good radio. So
Right.
this is good.
everything we talked about. I mean, all that stuff was fine, right?
Like how it's made.
Right, how it's made, acting, all that, totally cool. It's even the premise, the struggles with getting older when you're a celebrity and the shit you have to do. A lot, for everyone. Because I mean, look at fucking poor Mickey Rourke. Like,
Right.
Jesus
Right.
Christ, that
100%.
guy's a
Yeah.
fucking disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not just women. It's just when you're an attractive person.
Yeah.
The
Well,
upkeep-
everybody
right.
wants to be like the younger version of themselves.
Right,
Sure.
right.
I mean, you go to the gym,
Dude,
like you're always
hell yeah,
striving to
dude.
look like the best version of yourself.
Yeah, there's always room for improvement, and you want to try and meet those goals, even
But
though
on women's
sometimes they're
bodies,
like-
it's times 1,000.
right. You know what I mean? And especially because there's so much available to actually do to a
Sure.
woman's body that will make it. Some things actually look good, whereas if you're a dude, I want to get pec implants. Like they
Right.
look fucking ridiculous. I want to get calf implants. Like all the shit you can do on a guy looks ridiculous.
Right.
So, there is a difference. It just women's bodies are more adaptable like that way. But Okay, so the premise, I'm down for it. Totally down for the premise. The application of it, oh, dude, it's so clunky because they keep pushing it as a better version of her, right? So initially, already in your head, you're thinking, okay, so it's just going to be like a version of her that people are still going to kind of know it's her, but she's just like got younger, and everyone's like, "How holy shit, how you did it? How'd you do it?" And it, she creates this big, more buzz about her. She's reinventing herself. That's what I had. The impression I had in it.
Yeah,
Whereas
not a better, different
a
version.
different version, it's almost to
But
me,
they are. I struggled with it too.
they're
They're
the
the
same.
same person, but
They're different.
it is very hard. Like they share a consciousness, and it's not really that part of it is not dived into enough, and
Right.
that's where it loses me a little bit.
It
Beyond
fuck,
some other things, it definitely loses me in that we get beat over the head that you are one, you are
right,
one, you are
right.
one, and then when Sue or younger Elizabeth or better version Elizabeth, Sue,
Mhm.
let's just call her Sue because that's her name,
Right.
sees that like, oh, Elizabeth Sparkle is sitting in the chair all night or binge eating or doing all these things. She's disgusted by it, and she's like,
Right.
oh, well, I don't want to do that because like that's affecting my body.
Right.
But
Right.
they're both forgetting that they're the same person, but it's never really explained to us that like that they technically should know like
Right.
after the seven
They
days that
don't.
the other person like what they're doing, and
Right.
they only know because the TV is on
Right. Right.
and Elizabeth Sparkle when sees Sue on a talk show,
Right.
or she sees that which I thought this was brilliant, and I love this about it. It reminds me of like GTA Vice City,
Mhm.
where it's very much like we're in an alternate 1980s or late like
Totally.
90s,
Totally.
and like this is not a regular world that we're in.
Right.
It's too super sci-fi, which I do love this about it.
Right.
And I love that they're like, of course, like there's a giant billboard of her right in front of her window, and like
Right. Right.
that
Well,
shit was brilliant. But like
that.
the everything about it is brilliant. The mechanics of like how they're the same person gets lost a little bit.
Right. And that fucked me up because I'm like, okay, for me, it seemed it almost more of a metaphor of giving birth of child, like you're giving birth to a child that doesn't appreciate all the stuff you've given to them and all the, privileges you've bestowed on them. And they're just taking from you. Cause when she keeps on taking the fucking spinal fluid or whatever,
Oh, that scene was
you know,
rough.
like to me, that's like, oh, you have an ungrateful child that because you're not sharing, nobody experiences what the other one does. That's
Right,
independent.
but yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like what you're doing is affecting each other, and I guess it's kind of more like
Right.
a probably like a metaphor of like the younger you versus the older you.
Right.
But it's left for the audience to have this conversation, because
Right.
this is the conversation I've seen online where people who don't like this movie, it's always comes back to, well, they said they're one, but it seems like they don't know that what the other one is doing when they're knocked
Right.
out unconscious on the floor, which I thought was also really fucked up. They just left their bodies on the floor
Right.
in the bathroom.
Dude, and that's the
But then it was
biggest
funny though,
thing.
they were ashamed of their older self and they put the older one into that back room that she built. Like
Right.
like these metaphors are great. Like all this is good, but the actual application of the science fiction part of how they're interconnected, we should have been told that they share a consciousness more. And I think without telling us, and maybe I'm jumping to things here, and maybe we need to figure out or maybe look for more interviews with Coralie. Every time that something happens and we see this flaming thing, there's like a flaming visual on screen
Right.
where
Right.
like it
Right.
looks
Right.
like a heart or something is happening. I feel like that's like the molding of the two. Like you're still one, and there's something missing here. That like there was definitely something on the editing room floor or something that we're not
Yeah, I
getting that
feel like
explains like.
there's a part that's taken out that would give everything a little more context, but like that
But
part fucked me up because
some of it doesn't matter though because of like
yeah.
like this point they're trying to make comes across fine. It's that like I was fine with like the substance being like this box that you get in like a
Right.
room, and like the
Totally cool.
directions are very unclear. Like you just take
Right.
it. Like how would you know to sew each other back up? All that
Right.
shit. I'll let that go. That's like science fiction-y stuff. But there is like this weird thing where they hate each other because the other one has to exist with the other one, and they both want the younger one's life. But so you're led to believe that they know what's going on with the younger one's life, but it's not meant to know that like when Demi Moore, we'll just use her act,
Right.
or Elizabeth Sparkle, when she's unconscious on the ground for 7 days, she doesn't find out what happens until she wakes up,
Right.
which means they're not sharing a consciousness.
That's what I'm saying.
They're not, which is annoying.
Right. Like she's not experiencing anything the better version of herself is doing. And it's like, that would be the point.
The entire point of the substance.
Right.
But that might just be the part of the storytelling, the flaw of the substance.
Right.
Was like they got sold this bill of goods.
Totally.
It's not, but that's not what they tell us. But
right.
Which is fine. It does. I understand why it would ruin the enjoyment for sure.
Because also the other part of that too is like Demi Moore gets addicted to not wanting to end it.
Right. So that means she must have some sort of consciousness.
That's what I'm saying. So it gets like, so does she? But she
me and you might be too stupid to understand. Like we might not.
No, I think it was just.
I think it's a little too. I think it's a little too cooked. And we might have
they're
missed,
trying to really getting into something, and it's just once, like I said, once you try and do, I always say this: once you start to do too much, like it gets to be spaghetti.
Which is like, funny because like they didn't do too much. It was very simple until like that major piece seems to be missing though.
Right.
Like I feel like it's an easy explanation that we just never got.
Right. Like
and maybe it's on
probably
purpose. I don't know.
Yeah, there's probably some shit that was cut out that you're like, oh, okay, so that makes sense. But that fucked me up through the whole movie because I'm like,
I was thinking about it afterwards. Right afterwards, it was one of the first things I thought of.
Yeah, I would have liked this movie a lot better if it was just like, oh, here's this wonder drug that makes you look younger, and then she gets addicted to it. It's an old trope,
like the stuff,
right?
Kind of,
you know,
but different. Yeah,
yeah. That like makes you younger, makes you better. And she's addicted to it and she can't stop taking it. And that's the thing. Once you start taking it all the time and forever, it eventually fucks you up. And, you know, there's shit that goes wrong. That's what I would have loved, but it's not what I got. And it fucking irked me the entire movie and I couldn't get over it.
Yeah, I could see that. I could totally see that. I think once I accepted it and realized that there's probably some sort of shared consciousness that we're not getting, I kind of like looked past it because I was like, it does make sense, but it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And then like, you know, it makes sense for Sue's actions, like that Sue would want to stay younger. And she's like, just one more day.
Absolutely.
We got to do this gig, blah, 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 blah. But we can make the same argument that Elizabeth Sparkle has so much self-loathing and hate for being an old hag at this point,
right,
that of course she doesn't want to stop it because she must be getting something out of Sue existing.
Right.
So I think it's up to the viewer to make the bridge.
Right.
Even though it's not a clean bridge, it's kind of like a little.
That's why I said for me, it's more, comes off as more of a metaphor of an ungrateful child because she's still getting to live in a nice apartment or whatever when she wakes up for the 7 days she's there.
Right, but I guess that could be looked at like as a metaphor of like when we're younger and we're like don't realize what we have until we're older, and we're like, oh man, like that part of my life, I was ungrateful for what I had, the freedom, the energy, the whatever it is, you know.
Right, and then just how she keeps on taking from her. She's like, my old invalid mother. Here, I need fucking $300. Well, I don't have it. Well, I'm just gonna fucking steal some shit from you.
Yeah, and especially when she like kicks her, she's like, you're disgusting. Like, what were you eating?
Right.
But she's saying that, but that. I think you have to look more inward and look at it less like a mother, because what she's doing is affecting Sue because that chicken bone came out of her. So clearly they're one. Right. Well, so like Elizabeth Sparkle.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think that part actually happened because it was never mentioned and no one in the control booth afterwards was like, dude, there's a giant lump in your ass. It was just,
well, it was only because when they slowed it down and it paused.
Right. So I don't know if that.
Oh, that scene was sick though too. It was cool.
Yeah.
When she pulled it out, it was so gross.
Like the whole ending after she they have the fucking crazy Avengers fight, I think is almost, it's just like a fever dream. So I don't think it necessarily happens, but maybe some stuff happens. Also, when she starts mutating and they're all just pretending to not notice, like that part's obviously not real. She just has a fucking paper mask of herself.
Rewatching it, so that was the part that like a lot of people hated, right? And even me, I was like, we could have probably done without this. However, the absurdity of it and just like the idea of like all these people like want to be seen and accepted that they're just like, yeah, she's beautiful, like go you, and like so that didn't happen. So I think I don't know if you rewatched it, but when she's walking down the hallway with the paper stapled to her face
Right.
or glued to her face, there's nobody in the hallway.
Right.
And she's just imagining it in her mind because that's like what was happening to her earlier.
Right.
But that whole thing on stage when she walks out there and everybody's just like staring at her, like that's really happening. And it was also weird that there was like naked people on stage and there was like a kid in the crowd.
Dude,
Like,
me and my chick, that's the first thing we noticed. We're like, oh, that's weird. Why is there a kid at first?
I think it's because like the idea of bodies being on display
Right.
is like an thing in this universe.
Right. There was, I'm like, oh, well, maybe since there's only one kid that's kind of like representing
looked like
her as like a little child.
She also looked like a beauty pageant.
Right.
Like
right.
kid.
Well, she was wearing she was wearing
a crown.
She was
wearing
the
a
same
crown
dress,
too.
Yeah. As Sue was on stage.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, maybe that represents her in some way, but also
you
Hollywood.
mean Monster Sue?
Yeah. Yeah. Also Hollywood, weird to even put a kid in a scene like that. Not that there's probably real people on stage, but just in the movie, I'm like,
yeah.
With all the weird shit going on in Hollywood at this point, I'm like, maybe.
It's French. It gets a pass.
Yeah,
It's a French female director who her last movie was a rape revenge movie. So
right. The fucking French.
She gets
Leave
a pass.
It up to them.
But yeah, that scene, like full on gore, blood, ridiculous, like over the top. It's so over the top in the moment, but when you really look at it, when they're like she's a monster and she's like putting on her earrings and still trying to look pretty,
right.
Like this is like a metaphor of women always looking at themselves like they're not good enough or not pretty enough. So she was like, it was like almost like looking back at that scene where Demi Moore like gets a call from that guy and she's about to go on the date.
Right.
And she's like keeps rubbing off her makeup, which is like definitely something that women have gone through or go through.
Oh, I mean,
like it just doesn't feel perfect. You know?
We have ladies.
Yeah.
We've seen
it.
We're
So like, no, but like, not feeling comfortable in your own skin.
Right.
And so Monster Sue, whatever it was. Which I did like that, the breakup of it all and the sound design and all that, the noise, the substance noise, the whir noise, the horn.
Right.
Like when she glues her face on, which is, I think it's funny because that's also another big part of the movie is like this big picture of Elizabeth in the house. It's right. Like it's Elizabeth's house and her face, and then the picture gets removed, and then it gets smashed and then removed,
right.
And then gets brought back, and they take the face and she puts it back on. So like there's like this it's a constant back and forth of like self-hating, right. Self-loathing, and then like she puts the makeup still on the fucking picture, like it's ridiculous, but it's totally on brand for what the movie's trying to tell you,
for sure.
And then when they go on stage and like you're on display and like everybody looks at you like a monster, which is totally another thing. Like, anytime a celebrity or anybody's looked at. Yeah, it is ridiculous, the end. And it is a little long, but I think it hits. I still think it hits, especially with the opening scene with the star on the Walk of Fame, which there wouldn't be any snow. But
I was like, I mean, I guess technically there could be. I mean, it does snow every once in a while, but watching
the star in the beginning and the end and that
right. The second time, I was like, wait, that's in Hollywood. What?
Yeah, the face crawling, like like Demi Moore's face crawling, like the Thing. Super cool. Like it does have its flaws, and that is a major flaw. The one that we were talking about before.
Well, that's the other part too. Is like, for me, there's too much of two different movies going on where it gets kind of like the science fiction-y Cronenberg-y in the beginning, like about 3/4 of the way through, and then it totally switches to something like super ridiculous. I would have either liked it to be kind of serious the entire way through, or be that campy fucking basket casey the entire time. Because for me,
I could go with both. I actually really like both of them because I love that Cronenberg-y style of horror movie, and I love the trauma style thing. I think if it was 2 hours and 40 minutes of trauma style, all the metaphor and beauty stuff would never hit.
Well, it definitely could have been way shorter.
Everything
but also
could be shorter.
It goes like to the duality point of the two separate things. Like I get it all.
Yeah,
but it's just like the fucking just ass chapping with the application of the premise or the execution of it.
Dude, I 100%.
And then it like having the two different parts, and then like the whole superhero fight where she kicks her across the room, and then you're like, okay,
it's shorter than you think, but also unnecessary.
Right. And you're like, wait. Also, when Demi Moore's fully like sucked out and she can barely walk, and but then she's running through the city as old lady, like, wait, you couldn't even bend your knee in like the scene prior, and now you're sprinting. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I thought the same thing too.
Like stuff like that. If the execution of the premise was better, would be overlooked. But since it already had me pissed off, I'm like,
sure, you were just starting to pick on things then.
I'm like, Jesus Christ, like nothing's going right anymore. And for it being over 2 hours long, like towards the end, as soon as it gets to like the super crazy stuff, like I stopped giving a shit about the movie. I'm like, dude, I don't care anymore, like what's going on, because it's already kind of starting to jump all over the place at this point. Now I'm just like, wrap it up. I want it to wrap up. So
right.
You know,
yeah, it in first viewing it felt much longer. I think in the second viewing where the pacing makes a little bit more sense. I definitely felt the same way though. But I feel that way about most movies. I feel like nothing needs to be that long unless it's like really, really good. And even then, if it was going to be that long, like you should just have a mini series then.
Yeah, you could always cut shit out. Like always, there's always something that you're like.
Yeah, there was a lot they could have cut. They could have even cut out the scene like where she's at the diner and she runs into the old guy, who was clearly the guy who gave her the substance, and was just like, that scene didn't need to be there. It was fine.
Because also with that, at least Sue and Elizabeth, they may not look the same, but they're similar. Whereas
it's a better version.
Yeah. That old guy and then the orderly that gives her the thing, I'm like, this doesn't look like even close to better version of this old guy. This looks
right.
But
completely different person.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, it's a fair take, because I had a feeling that the whole time we were leading up to recording this episode, I'm like, I think the one thing that E doesn't really, really, really like about this movie is the clunky connection between the two of them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Everything, like, there's stuff in this movie that works, and I get why people appreciate it. I do. I understand why you love it. I understand why a lot of people love it. But like I said, for me, it was like,
it takes a little bit of jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, detail. I'm like, because like I said, there was so much buildup of what it was that going into it, I'm like, okay, it's going to be her struggling with getting older, and there's going to be all this stuff. Cool. And then when it kind of got muddy, and I'm like, all right, this is making me think too much for this type of movie.
Sure.
I'm just like, dude, I don't want to have to do this. I just want to see some senseless gore or monsters with. It
reminded me of like Possessor.
Right.
Did you see that movie?
Yeah.
One of the Cronenberg's kids. I remember watching it. I was just like, oh, I think I'm overthinking this now, or maybe it's too confusing now.
Right.
Sometimes you want like to be a little more mindless.
Right. And I get it.
That's why you guys see Terrifier.
Yeah, exactly. It's a simple trope. It's an old trope, and people like to try and make old things new, but sometimes I like my old things just old and simple and, whatever.
Somebody was telling me that there's a movie that's a really good accompaniment to this movie from like the 90s. And I can't think of the name of it right now. But if anybody's listening back and wants to jump in the comments on like Instagram or Facebook, there is another movie that this movie is very much based upon. Somebody was saying. They were saying it was almost like a remake of it. I gotta look, but there was, when we finish, I'll look.
Right.
But somebody was like, oh, this movie is basically this other movie from the early 90s or late 80s, just done like to like another level. And I can't think of what it is right now.
Right.
But I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'll do some research on that too.
But like you said, like there's, this is a common story, just done differently.
Right.
But you know what's really cool though? It's her second movie ever. So that's pretty good for a second movie.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the actual making of the movie is great. It's fine.
The sound and the visuals and sound are nuts. Like it's crazy.
Right. And again,
storytelling was the issue.
Storytelling was the issue because everything else is good. The acting's good. The camera work is good. The gore is good.
It's cool. Cool. You keep saying camera work, and it makes me think of beyond like the bathroom scene stuff, like because the angles are really good. Like you're in like this private. The bathroom's like a private spot to be in.
Right.
And so like their bathroom is very sterile feeling, and so it's very not sterile once there's like goop everywhere. And that transformation scene is pretty awesome. But that aside, the camera work in the scene where the monster becomes a thing, when they become Monster Elisu and they're going back to the studio, the camera is like hanging back behind the monster at this weird angle. I've never seen that angle before. It's almost like video game like, but when you're looking up at the sky in a video game, from like a third person view, it's like up really close behind the monster. I was like, and it's kind of frenetic. It's like following it and moving. I was like, this is a different kind of camera shot that I really appreciate because it's like a view we never get of a monster. Dude, like we're never following something. Yeah, I thought it was cool.
Like all that stuff was good. It was just like the story needed to be tighter, and it bummed me out because there's something there.
And it's funny because it's like the main story plot point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm just like, oh, and it just fucked me over the entire movie.
And I wonder if that's part of the story, and I need to figure that out. Like the whole like every time she calls and she's like, the other person's fucking this up. Like there is no other person. It's just you.
Right.
So like, is that like the substance people like fucking with them and being like, we just sold you this bill of goods? Because we never know how much it costs or anything like that. But like clearly it's something expensive because when they go to the storage units to pick it up, there's only like 12 people.
Right.
Like like using it.
Or is it just the whole thing in metaphor? Is she just really, she got some good work done. So everyone's kind of like, she created Sue in her head, but it's really her. Like, it could go.
It could be very much all that. And we just don't know.
Right. You just don't know.
But, the fucking neighbor across the hallway.
Yeah. Who like wouldn't know, like, oh, Elizabeth moved out. Like, but you see her every 7 days. Like,
yeah, it was funny.
And then Sue's obviously a fucking carpenter now and can just build an entire room in her bathroom.
I did see somebody make that comment goes like the most impressive thing about this movie was that Sue had the skills to build a whole secret room in her bathroom.
Right.
And then retile it.
In 7 days. Or probably less because she was going out.
Right. She was filming her Pump It Up show.
Yeah. So I'm like, Jesus Christ. Okay. That's a lot of work. But anyway,
do you think this movie gets nominated for any
dude, I don't know.
It because of Demi Moore, it could have. It definitely won't.
Yeah, I don't think it will. But who knows? I mean,
it won't. Come on. I don't know. It's got a lot of Fly in there. People said it reminds them of The Fly.
A little bit.
Was The Fly nominated for anything?
I don't think so.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's rate
scores.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
All right. 1.5 monstery goopy candy corns.
Shut the fuck up,
dude.
1.5 candy corns.
1.5. Like I said.
Can you get me two candy corns?
I can't.
How many candy corns did you give Long Legs? Can you go back and find out?
I think probably about the same.
This is better than Long Legs.
Dude, I don't know.
You don't know? What are you talking about? The only thing you don't like about it is this tiny storytelling element.
Dude, this one was rough for me.
It's your rating.
Yes, I think we'll go. All right, you know what? We'll go 1.75.
I appreciate
candy corns.
I brought mine down a little after our conversation.
Right, because I think that's what Long Legs was, and these are two movies where there's stuff there that I like that I wish were better, and that bumps me out when I see a movie that I'm like, dude, you could have done this better. For me personally. So
people are talking about Long Legs getting nominated for Academy Awards.
Fuck you.
Yep. Nope.
No.
Honora is going to win the Academy Awards this year. That movie was great. Anyway, I came in here with a 4.5, but after our conversation, and because your reasoning for your score is the reason why mine wasn't a 5, it was because it was too long and because the clunky main story element.
Right.
I know that's not the main reason for this movie, but the science fiction element of what connects them together and their consciousness is a little clunky.
Right.
I give it a 4.
Okay.
Probably my highest grade of the year. I don't think anything will beat it at this point. Terrifier was pretty up there. We never did Terrifier, but my Terrifier score is pretty high, not that high.
Right.
And we'll see. We have Heretic still. I think Companion is coming out next year, but that looks really good. And Nosferatu is probably the only thing that could potentially overtake this, but honestly, I don't think it's going to happen.
Averaged out, it's a 2.9 since we're doing, there's only 2 of us. But I think if you're into horror, like body horror and like campy stuff, you'll like this movie. Definitely go see it. But
sure,
for me, it was a swing and a miss. Anyway, Gucci T, thanks for crossing streams with me tonight.
Oh, it's great to be back. It's been a while.
It has been. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. And next time we'll talk about some more spooky shit. So with that being said, thanks again, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Monster Candy Podcast.
Give me some sugar, baby. Like scary movies.
Want some candy?
Square in the eye and he says, "Get away from her, you bitch!"
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Your move, creep.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.